Greetings, students, and welcome to video 6 here. And this is our second video about informative speaking in preparation of speech number 2. And in this video, what we're going to do is to look at two example speeches again, kind of like we did in the previous video. But this time, the videos are following our structure for speech 2 to a T. Okay, so all of the items that are required for these presentations are happening in both of the videos that we're going to look at in this example. Now, before we get to those two examples, I did want to just highlight something. You will have noticed on the cover of our syllabus for class, it directs you very clearly that we're not allowed to use AI for this class as we're creating our outlines. Now, there's a few reasons why that is the case. And so first I want to just walk through a document that I found online by an Alexander Tulkanov for January of 2023. And it just sort of asks the question, like, if we were going to use AI, so some kind of LLM, whether that's ChatGPT or whatever it might be, okay, how would I make a decision about whether or not AI is even appropriate for me to use? And so the first question that you have to ask is the one that's here at the center of the screen. Does it matter if the output is true? So when we're giving an informative speech, we're supposed to be teaching people about something. And that thing better be true, because there are ethical implications of talking to people and telling them lies, telling them misinformation. And we have enough of that in our contemporary society, and we don't want to add to it. We don't want to add to it. So does it matter if the output is true? For this class, the answer is yes. We want to be telling the people information that is true. So if the answer were no, then it would be fine to use AI because it wouldn't matter. But here it does matter. We have to be telling the people true stuff. So the answer is yes. Now we go to the next question that's here. Do you have the expertise and time to verify that the information that you get is true? Our class is only 7 weeks if we're doing the express session of this class. Regardless, we have a limited amount of time to get these outlines together. So do you have the time and expertise to verify that the information is true? Now, maybe you do, but for most of us, we probably don't. We don't want to spend the rest of our lives doing this assignment. And so if the answer is no, I don't have time to check that the information that I've received is true, or I don't have the expertise, I don't know this well enough to know if what I'm getting is true, then you can't use AI because you don't have time or you don't have the expertise. If the answer is yes, that either you do have time, you've got all the time in the world to devote to this assignment that we're working on, and you can verify if that stuff is true, then you got to go to the next question. Are you willing or able to take responsibility if stuff is wrong? Because if you get here and you lied to the people, then that is not going to be okay. All right. So that's the next question. And then the last one here, it says, even then, because if the answer was yes, that you're going to take responsibility, you've got time, or you know well enough, you have the expertise, then it's possible. Possible does not mean permissible. And for this class, we're just not doing that. We're not doing that. And why? I know, as you're going to see in these two examples, that when we're making these videos for this class, it is quite common for people to read to us. I want you to resist that. I want you to resist it. The class is not reading out loud. The class is public speaking. And our task is to do extemporaneous speeches, which is to say that we've outlined what we want to talk about, we have prepared, we've planned, we've practiced, but we're not memorized, we're not word perfect. We're not reading. The class is not reading out loud. So if you use ChatGPT to create the outline and you're just reading it out loud, I mean, you could be reading something out of a book. That is not the class. That is not the assignment. The idea is that you're organizing ideas that you have come up with yourself, and then you're talking about them to us in the same way that I am right now. I'm not reading to you. Okay? I'm just talking to the camera. It's structured. I have slides that are going to keep me in order, with the ideas that I want to talk about, but I'm not reading to you. I'm not pulling ideas from somewhere else and pretending that they're my own. If I've got something like this picture that's on the screen here that's from somebody else, I'm telling you who it's from. Okay, I'm sharing that. I'm being ethical and truthful, transparent about getting information from somewhere else. And also, I'm sharing with you what I've learned how to do from having done this, from having practiced this, from having taught it 100 times or whatever it is. How many classes I've taught, I don't know. So that needs to be your same ethic, at least for the work in this class, okay? So we're not using AI. For speech two here, we're going to be talking about a country or a culture or our neighborhood, and we're going to be sharing information that we already know, ideally, because that's the task really is to figure out the structure and to get used to this structure that we have to do for speech two, and not that we are giving a book report or looking up information online. We'll do that for speech three. We'll do research and preparation, and it will be much more formal. Here, just stuff that you already know. And in these two speeches that you're going to see the examples of in this video, the first, a gentleman's going to be talking about stuff that he knows about from France, because he's been a lover of France for his whole life. He'll tell you in the video. The second person's going to talk about their neighborhood in the Bronx. Okay, the icy lady, their elevator. Okay, very specific to where they live. And that kind of informal nature of the information is just, stuff that you can share with us that you already know. One topic, three main points. Here we go. Okay, so the first video, we're going to have someone speaking about France. So let's look at what they have to share with us.
My name is John McCollum, and this is my speech number 2. Did you know that Washington, D.C. and the Statue of Liberty were given to us by the French? Did you also know that France's longest shared border is actually with Brazil? In this presentation, I'm going to be sharing with you some interesting facts about France. The three main topics I will cover are French food, French language, and French culture. I know about this topic because I actually have an undergraduate degree from the George Washington University in French Studies, and I've been an avid Francophile all my life. First, we're going to talk about French food. Food is considered an art form in France, but many people view it as bizarre. Escargot, frog legs, and foie gras are common things associated with French cuisine that are not actually everyday food items in France. Ordinary French food are much more easily recognizable, such as cheese, wine, and baguette. And no, French fries and French toast are not actually French. So that was a brief introduction to French food. Next, let's discuss French language. Language is so important to the French that it is curated and protected by the government. Unlike English, which evolves rapidly under the influence of pop culture, the French dictionary is highly regulated, and that's because 30 countries represented on nearly every continent use French as their official language. French is derived from Latin, with similar roots to Spanish and Italian. French is also universally considered the language of love, and a French-speaking person is more likely to use a romantic expression than any other language. Many English words are even taken from French, such as camouflage and silhouette. And that was a brief introduction to the French language. The last topic I will cover is French culture. Besides food and language, art, literature, and fashion are pinnacles of culture in France, recognized worldwide. A prime example of this is that many Disney stories we commonly know are based on classic French literature, such as Cinderella and The Hunchback of Notre Dame. Easily identifiable Impressionist paintings from French artists like Monet and Renoir are also important. You would also probably recognize several French fashion designers like Louis Vuitton and Dior. And that was a brief introduction to French culture. I hope for my presentation that you learned something new about France that you didn't know before. I covered food, language, and culture. I would like to now close with a quote from Thomas Jefferson, who said, "Every man has two countries, his own and France."
All right, folks. So let's zero in here. Speech two is supposed to be 3 to 5 minutes, and that presentation was 3 minutes, okay? And all 17 of the things that are required to be said in the speech, they all happened. And so let's walk through them one at a time just to confirm that, okay? We've got three things that we've got to do in the introduction. We have to start with an attention getter. We've got to preview the topic and the three main ideas. And then we've got to talk about credibility. And so let's remember for the attention getter, okay, we had that handout that was on the introduction and conclusion, and it gave us some suggestions for what we could do for an attention getter, whether we tell a story, have listener participation, ask a question, whatever it's going to be, okay? And so in this video, the guy's talking about France, okay? So he starts out with a question. Did you know that both Washington, D.C. and the Statue of Liberty were given to us by the French? Did you also know that France's longest shared border is actually with Brazil? Okay, so the first question, he's talking about the layout of the streets, coming from a Frenchman, okay, is sort of the historical narrative that we live by. And then France's longest shared border is with Brazil, so French Guiana in South America. So they're asking two rhetorical questions, perfectly fine. And so that is the attention getter. Then we've got to preview the topic and the three main points. After my 5-minute informative speech, my classmates will know three things about the topic, okay? So we're talking about France, and the three main points that we're going to talk about here in this presentation are French food and French language and French culture. And then the last thing with credibility, why should we believe you? So I've given an instruction, we must state this as I know about this topic because. Why do we know about the topic? And so in this case, he tells us, I know about this topic because I have an undergraduate degree in French studies, and I've been an avid Francophile all my life. Francophile, a lover of all things French, okay? Perfect. Now, in the body of the speech, we've got to have three main points. And so I'm giving you very specific instruction here, okay, about how to think about the four pieces that need to happen in each main point. That we're going to state the point, we're going to do it in a sentence, and we're going to use signal words. That we're going to explain the point in one or two sentences. That we're going to illustrate the point with an example or tell a story. And so that'll usually be about 2 or 3 sentences. And then we're repeating the point in a sentence with signal words, okay? So here, stating it and repeating it, it's really important that we state and repeat the point exactly the way that we introduced it in the introduction. And then at the end of the speech, you're going to review it in the same way in the conclusion. So when we're in the main points, if main point 1, you said it's going to be about French food, it has to be food all 4 times that you say it in the introduction, when you state it in the main point, when you repeat it in the main point, and then when you review it in the conclusion. Food, if food is the word that you're using. So it can't transform itself into cuisine or some other word. You choose the word, that's the main point. It's going to be consistent each time, okay? And why? Like I say, like that when we're laying this out in the introduction, we're creating a roadmap for the listener. We're making a contract with the listener. We're saying, this is what I'm going to tell you. Okay, and for all the reasons that we understand that when we're giving a presentation, it's not like watching, it's not like reading a book where I can just back up a couple of pages if I need to see what I missed. No, that I'm just hearing it as it goes, as it unfolds, and we want to make sure that the people follow us. We don't want to make them have to pause and rewind our video. We want them just to hear it straight through from beginning to end and get through it. When we're stating it and repeating it, that we're using these signal words, okay, in order to show us where we are in the speech and indicate that we're either starting a main point or finishing it. And so those signal words being things like first let's talk about, or now let's talk about, and then when we're ending. So that was a little bit about, or that was an introduction to kind of thing. So first let's talk about food. Explain the food in 1 or 2 sentences, give an example or tell a story in 2 or 3 sentences, and then to end that main point. That was a little bit about food. And that we'll go on and do that for each of our main points. With the explain it that we're doing that in 1 or 2 sentences. The example or story in 2 or 3 sentences. If you're using a story, remember that a story, like we learned about speech number 1, is going to be a particular time and place, and something highly specific has to happen. Okay, and think about those 5 W's if that's helpful: who, what, when, and where, and why, that kind of thing. Just to make sure that we're giving something thorough for the people, something that makes sense to the people. You haven't left them with lots of questions, but short, because our presentation is short, okay? When we wrap this up, then in the conclusion, we've got 2 things we need to do: reviewing the topic and the 3 main points, and having a power punch. So when we're thinking about this structurally, that we'll put that into a sentence. Today I told you 3 things about your topic. In this case was France, right? And then I talked about you'll list the 3 main points. And in this case, it was food and language and culture. And then we end with a power punch. And so in that presentation, he said, I would like to know, I would like to now close with a quote from Thomas Jefferson. He said, every man has 2 countries, his own and France. Okay, and so remember when I talked about Lisa Henry talking about Oprah's favorite quote, and I said you got to tell the people where the quote came from. So here we have an example of that. That this is coming from Thomas Jefferson, and then this is what he had to say. When we're thinking about the power punch again, we can look back at that handout on the introduction and conclusion, where we had some different ideas about how we could incorporate a power punch at the end of the speech. And in this case, the person chose to use a quote, which is perfectly fine. And so, as I said at the outset here, that this was a 3-minute presentation. All 17 of our criteria for what needed to be said in the speech happened. That obviously was making eye contact with the camera, charismatic. For charisma, you'll be as exciting as you are. I mean, be yourself. Don't try to be somebody else. But obviously, this person knew a lot about France and wanted to share that with us, and that's okay. And they did it within the time frame. So that's 20 items that are graded on this speech. This person got a perfect score. Okay. We have another example that we'll look at now. And in this presentation, the person, as I say, is talking about their neighborhood in the Bronx on 149th Street. And so have a look at that. And then we'll just wrap up this presentation, this video after.
What was the neighborhood you grew up in like? Today I'm going to share with you a little bit about the neighborhood I grew up in, which was 149th Street in the Bronx. After my speech, my classmates will know 3 things about my neighborhood, which are the Icy Lady, the parks, and the elevators. I know about this area of the Bronx because I lived there for 23 years of my life. I recently moved out of that neighborhood this past September. So for the first point, we're going to talk about the Icy Lady. But to start off, this part of the Bronx is very diverse. There are African Americans, Puerto Ricans, Dominicans, Jamaicans, and much more. There are many languages and different cultures. No matter who it is, no matter where you're from, and no matter what age you are, everyone knows the Icy Lady. As a kid, when I would go to the park on a hot summer day, I would play with my friends until I was completely drenched with sweat and super thirsty. And as kids, when we were thirsty, we would dig in our pockets to see if we have 2 quarters or any amount of change that would equal out to 50 cents. And when you have that 50 cents in your hand, you would break your neck looking around for the Icy Lady. And everyone knows the Icy Lady. We would chase her down for blocks just to have a coconut or a cherry icy. So that's a little introduction to the famous Icy Lady of the Bronx. For the second point, we will talk about the parks. As a child, even as a teenager, there were 2 parks that I would go to. One of the parks was PS5, and the other was St. Mary's Park in the Bronx. Growing up, PS5 was strictly for basketball, freeze tag, TV tag, and the nostalgic classic tag. For recess, me and my friends would play basketball 5 versus 5. When the game was over, we would play a quick game of tag before the bell rang for us to go back into the school. Now, at St. Mary's Park, this park was strictly for the snowy days. And I mean those days that there were blizzards and they would have to close the school down. My family members would take off of work and we would meet my friends at the park to go sledding. We would go up and down that hill until it was nighttime. It wasn't just my family outside, it was the whole neighborhood with their sleds on that hill. So that's the introduction to the 2 parks of the neighborhood that I grew up in. For my third and final point, we will talk about the elevators in my neighborhood. The elevators in my neighborhood are horrifying. In my neighborhood, the elevators have minds of their own. They will take you to the wrong floor, the lights will flicker, or they will just turn off. And sometimes the door won't even open. Now just imagine, you just walk into your building and you already hear the elevator alarm bell ringing. Then as you approach the elevator door, it's already there waiting for you, and you see the light flickering. You had a long day at school, your backpack is full of books, and there is no way you're walking up 18 flights of stairs. You are willing to take the risk and step into the elevator that is awaiting for you. You get into the elevator and you press the 18th floor, and the door begins to close very slowly. Now the elevator begins to go up, and you can hear all the metal shaking while you're still standing still, fearfully. Finally, the elevator slows down and the door opens. It's the 16th floor. At this point, you call it quits and you run up the 2 extra flights. This was my life on a weekly basis with elevators in my neighborhood. That is just one of the many experiences that you will encounter with elevators in my neighborhood. In conclusion, today I told you 3 things about my neighborhood. I talked about the icy lady, the parks, and the elevators. Sweet, fun, yet suspenseful. Pretty much sums up how it was growing up in my neighborhood. So, let me ask you again. What was the neighborhood you grew up in like?
Okay, so in this second example, 149th Street in the Bronx, that's the topic, okay? We had 3 main points, all right? So we heard about the icy lady, we heard about the parks, 2 parks in particular, and we heard about the elevators in this neighborhood, in particular the buildings where this young person used to live. And so when we think about the structure of the speech and what's required, there again, all 17 things that are required to be stated in the speech that we started with is attention getter. We heard what the topic was going to be in the 3 main points. There was this establishment of credibility, why the student knew about this topic, and then we dealt with each one of the main points individually. First, let's talk about this icy lady. We heard about her, so that's a little bit about the icy lady. Now let's talk about the parks. We heard about the 2 parks that this person shared about, and that was a little bit about the parks. And then finally, let's talk about the elevators, okay? And so we had the uncertainty about where the elevators were going to take us, and that was it. In the conclusion, then, that we review 149th Street in the Bronx, and we heard about these 3 things, the icy lady and the parks and the elevators, and then we had the power punch at the end, and that's it, okay? Again, eye contact with the camera, that we're charismatic again as much as we can be about the topic. We're knowledgeable about it, and we share the information that we know, and then that we're doing that in 3 to 5 minutes. Now, I do want to highlight a couple of other things as we're thinking about, okay, speech 2 and what we've got to do. The first thing is just to notice differences about these 2 videos. So in the first video, we had the presenter just talking directly to the camera and going through all 17 things required in the presentation, which is fine, perfectly fine. And for what the assignment is, what's required of you for the class, that is sufficient. Better, though, is the second video, when this time the student was able to incorporate visual aids. So we see a picture of the icy lady or an icy lady. We see the picture of the parks that we're talking about. We see a picture of sort of the buildings, the elevators, that kind of stuff. Now, this student, I don't know how they created this video. I don't know what they use, Canva or something. I'm not sure. If you know how to use some kind of software that's going to enable you to do that, go right ahead, okay? And we're going to look at another video where we're going to talk about presentation aids, and then we'll see what's required there. But this is our last sort of opportunity to talk about what the video itself is going to look like. And so I just wanted to highlight that for you. If you can find a way to incorporate your visual aid, it will be better. It will be better, but it's not required. You'll have some kind of visual aid. You have to submit that as an assignment. I'll talk about that in the other video, but I just wanted to note that for you. The video will be better if we can see the visual aid at the same time. Now, I do want to talk just a little bit more about what we're going to do now in preparation of speech 2, which is our outline. Okay, and so when we go into Brightspace and we look at the speech 2 outline, which is the next assignment, you're going to go to this Google Doc again, like we did for speech 1. And this time it's a little bit different than what we had for speech 1, because remember, the speech 1 outline had 3 questions. This time we have just a bunch of things listed on the document. And so what do we do? Where do we write? What do we got to do? Okay. You got to put your name on top of the document. And then what we're doing is we're writing next to anywhere where there is a colon, okay? Whenever we've got the colon there on the page, that's where we're going to write. So it says attention getter, we're going to put the attention getter. So just to note that. Introduction here is listed because it's telling us we're going to write about the introduction in this part. That's what we're doing. That's the section. And it's in bold because it's showing us it's a section. But where we're actually writing is the attention getter, okay? After my 5-minute informative speech, my classmates will know 3 things about. Your topic goes there, people. So 149th Street in the Bronx. France, you have to put your topic before you list the 3 main points. The 3 main points of my speech are 1, 2, and 3. Credibility, I know about this topic because. Write that, and then complete the sentence. Okay, I have it in this version I'm showing you right now in red. When you look at the document, it's not there. So you need to remember to do that. And then in main point 1, nothing goes next to that. It's just a section. Main point 1, state it. Okay, first let's talk about whatever your first main point is. Explain it in 1 to 2 sentences, give an example or tell a story in 2 or 3 sentences, and then repeat it. So that was a little bit about whatever main point 1 was. Main point 2, okay, that's a section again. Main point 2, state it. And so now let's get going. In Brightspace, you'll see that I have provided a sample outline. So you see what this form looks like when it's filled in, okay? So this is from a student a number of semesters ago. They start with their attention getter. Are you interested in learning about other cultures? I know I am, and today I want to share with you about a culture that you may not be familiar with. After my 5-minute informative speech, my classmates will know 3 things about Sierra Leone, West Africa. That's their topic. Then they have their 3 main points. I know about this topic because I was born and raised there, blah, blah, blah. So let's talk about types of food, because that's their first main point. We've got 2 sentences about that. And then they give their example or story. And in this example I'm giving you, I'm telling you this person didn't do it great. Okay, it wasn't perfect. So I gave them feedback in the document. So you'll see that, okay? The 2 videos that we watched today, those ones are great. They're fine. They gave enough information. They're all good. In this example, when I give this sample, the person, it wasn't quite there. So we see the kind of feedback that I'll give you if it's not quite what it needs to be. Okay? And so that was a little bit about the food, and then they go on to main point 2 and so on. So that's what your assignment is going to be now. So we've seen examples of speech 2. We've gone over all the criteria. We're going to be working on the outline. And so that is our task ahead that we're going to be filling in the outline for whatever you're going to talk about in your speech. We had the assignments in the discussion board where you're meant to share what your topic is that you're thinking about and the main points. We've looked at what other people have said that they might talk about just to see how we're all thinking about what to do for this presentation. And now your task is to do the outline. Okay, in the outline, everything in complete sentences. Okay, and you fill in the whole form. There's 17 things that need to be there. 3 things in the introduction, 4 things in each main point, and 2 things in the conclusion. Okay, your outline will be submitted. I'll get feedback to you, and then we'll go on to the presentation. And you also have to prepare for the visual aid, and that will come in the next video. Take care.